Well, good. I can't tell if they're giving me a thumbs up. There, now I can hear myself. Very good. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I just learned that you should not ever follow Ron Luce. Who set this calendar up? If we can put the PowerPoint up, I'd appreciate that once we get there. So my title that I was given was Building Buy-In, Strategies for Gaining Support and Investment. And we're going to talk about that today, but first I wanted to tell you a little bit more about me and about, what's that? My slides are not on. They weren't on that. Okay. Well, I'll give this to you, and maybe he can figure that out. Pastor, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming to work.
This is what it takes to do something the first time you do it. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about the church that I pastor. That's where I was going to start out, so that you can understand a little bit of what I do and where I came from. I'm in New Hampshire. Has anybody been to New England? Yes, a few people. Good, good. Anybody here from California? Isn't anybody, everybody in Morgan is from California. Isn't that what I've been told? Just about, yeah. Well, I used to be in California. And so I was in Southern California, and that's how I got connected with Grace International, because I was going to a church that was pastored by Steve Riggle in San Marcos, California. And within 10 minutes of hearing Steve Riggle preach, I turned to my wife and I said, this man has the same anointing on him as Jack Hayford. And when I was younger, I used to go to church on the way. And Jack Hayford was my pastor for over 10 years. And he spoiled me because he was really good. And I couldn't find another pastor with the same kind of anointing until I ran into Steve Riggle. And then I said, that's where we're going to go to church. And then a few years later, my wife and I decided we were going to leave California, because don't you know, everybody wants to leave California now. California proves once again what we learned in Genesis, that bad choices can destroy paradise. No question about it. And so we looked at the map, and we were down there on the corner in San Diego, and we said, now just how far can we go to get away from this place? And we ended up all the way up in New Hampshire. Now, New Hampshire's a beautiful place, especially this time of the year. It's just gorgeous like here. But there are no Jack Hayford type pastors in New England. I mean, all of New England. Couldn't find them. Couldn't find them. Maybe there is, but I couldn't find them. And so one day I called Steve Riggle, and I said, Steve, treat us like old Europe. Send us a missionary. Send us somebody who wants to plant a church here, and we'll support them. And he said, well, I could hear him shake his head. And he said, well, why don't you do it, Howard? And that put me on a path of interviews and studies and things that I had not anticipated doing with my life. And, you know, I think most people perhaps start a church when they're a little bit younger. This week, I applied for Medicare. I did. Before I came on this trip, I applied for Medicare. So this is what I'm going to do in what I'm now considering retirement, what I was planned to do in retirement. Oh, good. Okay, that'd be great. Thank you, Sherry. And I'm glad they figured it out. Technology wasn't my forte, I guess. So we started a church, and the church we started with no money and very few people. We decided we would just get started. Here, this was my introductory slide. I was an attorney practicing estate planning law in San Diego, but I sought honest employment as a politician. And I got elected to the California State Assembly. I had 500,000 constituents, and I really enjoyed it. I was anointed for it. There was an anointing being in office, for the office. And being a conservative Christian, in the California legislature. It was a very small caucus. And so I got invited to speak at a lot of different places. And one place was the Claremont Institute. And the Claremont Institute had a man by the name of Larry Arnn, who was president at the time. And then in the year that I was termed out of office, Larry Arnn became president of Hillsdale College. And so then he contacted me and he said, Howard, continue your fight for freedom with me at Hillsdale College. And so that's how I got to be with him at Hillsdale. And I've been there now 24 years. And I was, until recently, the National Plan Giving Director, where we raise literally $3.5 to close to $4 billion in those 24 years. And I'm going to show you how we did that. And I'm going to suggest you do the same. Being in New Hampshire, that's my wife Martha, by the way. And then being in New Hampshire, you know, we're the first in the nation primary. And so you get to meet all the candidates. And so we met Donald Trump back in 2015. It was very cool. I started the Tea Party Express. We're the ones with the buses. Could I get a little bit of water? That'd be great. We had 13 nationwide bus tours across the country, and we had to raise money for that. And so that's some of the things that we did. I don't know which one of these dots is your church, but I can show you which dot is my church. We're the only one up there. And of course, thank you, not having any support base or any people that know anything at all about grace, we had to create our own vision. So we did. We decided that Christianity came to America on the Mayflower and landed at Plymouth Rock there in the New England area. You can see that red spine. I don't know if you can read it on this map, but it says Bible. The Mayflower brought the Bible to New England, and from New England, Christianity spread through the continent, and from the continent, we have sent missionaries throughout the world, evangelizing the world. Yet now we need missionaries to come back to New England and redig those ancient wells. And that's what Grace International is going to do. We're going to put 50 churches in New England redigging those ancient wells, reaching the people of New England. So here's what we did. We started in a barn. And by the way, we're still in the barn. We've only been open a year, and so we hosted a Bible study in our house for many years, and we decided we'd turn that Bible study into a church, and the largest room in our home is a barn. So we said, let's all meet in the barn. And people love it, actually. There's Uncle George. He came and spoke a week ago at our church. He's been there twice now, and I'm hoping that he'll move to New Hampshire and help out, and that might happen. But you know, people in New England, they don't mind coming to church in a barn because they're not intimidated by the building itself. And so we've been reaching a number of people. If everybody came to church for the first day that we were opening, who told me they were going to come, who promised me they were going to come, who are my friends that I know, where I twisted their arm to bring them, 35 people would have come to the barn. Well, my wife and I are scrambling to get 35 chairs. We had garden chairs, we had rocking chairs, I had a couple of stools, I had all kinds of things. The day we were going to open, we got a phone call from another church about an hour away who said, we heard you're starting a church in a barn. We're closing our doors. We have pews. If you'd like to come and get our pews, you can come and pick them up for free. So the morning of the event, of the first day we were opening, we went, a friend of mine and I, with a truck and a trailer, went and got these pews that could seat 35 people. So we took all of our garden chairs and yard chairs away and we set up the pews. And that first day, we ended up with 10 people. Now, you'll have to take away the 2 Texans you see. And out of the 10 adults, my wife and I are 2. So actually, we had 8 people who came. That was July 15 of last year. Then at Christmas, we had 39, and at Easter, we had 70. And so that's not bad for the first year, I guess, meeting in a barn. And so I'm happy about that. We've been growing. Here was our Christmas service. It's kind of dark. You can't really see it very well. But that was Christmas in the barn. And then we're baptizing people in our swim spa. So it's heated. It's a heated swim spa. So it's heated all year long. I baptized one man by himself the first time, and then another family of 5 decided they wanted to get baptized as a family. And that's us getting baptized. So we have a real church. Next month, we're going to have a wedding. Everybody's happy about that except the town. About a month into it, my wife took an ad out in the local newspaper, and we said, come to church, new church in town. Come to the church and worship the Lord with us. And we got a knock on the door. Somebody came up and said, I hear you're having church in this house. I said, yes, we are. He said, well, I am the zoning code enforcement officer, and you have to shut down. Really? Why is that? Because this area where you live is zoned purely residential. So you cannot have a church here. I said, well, that's interesting. I read the zoning code of our town, and it said this: residential district permitted uses. First word. So what's wrong with that? The zoning code enforcement officer said, well, I don't know anything about that. I'm not a lawyer. To which my reply was, that's funny, I am. This man turned ashen white. He didn't know what to do, so he started talking. When people are nervous, they start talking. And he said, it's not that I don't want you to have a church. My father's a pastor. He's a pastor down in Florida, but I don't believe anything my father believes. I'm an atheist. But that has nothing to do with this. So I go back and forth with the town a little bit. We write letters. They eventually issue a cease and desist order fining me $500 a day until I quit having church, to which I said no. And we hired First Liberty, these guys out of Texas, these attorneys. Do you know them? They're great. We got that cease and desist set aside temporarily, and then we entered into negotiations. The town said, the reason we don't want you having church in your home is not because it isn't zoned. The zoning code enforcement officer was wrong. You can have a church in the residential district, but that's not a residential use, and your home is only for residential uses. I said, well, what's that? What's a residential use? Do you know what church activity is? I said, here's what we do in church. We read from a book. Is book reading not permitted as a residential use, or is it just this book you want to censor? We sing songs. Is singing songs not permitted in a home, or is it just worship songs you don't want? I get up and I speak on a topic of my choosing every week. You know, we're a very political area. We have the first in the nation primary. We have all the presidential candidates come by. I've had all kinds of candidates at my house. I even had RFK Jr. at my house as a candidate. I thought that if he was, at that time he was a Democrat, and I thought if I could disrupt the Democrat primary system a little bit by encouraging opposition to the incumbent, that it would be a good thing. We had 300 people at our house for the RFK event. So we're a very political environment. I get up and I speak on a topic of my choosing. Are you going to tell all the people in this town that they cannot rant to their friends? Because, that's basically what it is. Or is it just that you don't want somebody, when they call it a sermon, and that's what you want to censor? Oh, the town doesn't know what to do with me. So God does, though. So what's happened since we started our church is the entire town selectmen, that's what we call our city council, though we're not a city. I mean, we don't even have a traffic light in town. We call ourselves the town selectmen. That board has completely changed over. Now my friends are on the board of selectmen. The planning board, the zoning code enforcement officer, he answered to a board that hired him. And by the way, he quit because I sued him personally in addition to suing the town, since he was outside of his purview as a government agent. You know, you cannot infringe upon a person's constitutional rights and call it something that your job description in town as a government official allows you to do. And so he quit. It doesn't matter, we're still suing him. And yet the person who hired him, that guy who was on this board for 30 years, he decided, his time was up, and the new town selectmen did not reappoint him. And all of his cronies that were on the board with him, they decided they were going to try to pressure the town selectmen into reappointing this leader of this little cabal. And so they all quit. They all resigned in protest. And the new town council said, that's fine, we'll take your resignation. And it's a totally new board now. And so it's a very interesting event. We're still in court. We'll see how it ends. So you have to stand for your rights as a pastor. There's no doubt. Government thought that through COVID they had more control over you than they actually do, and they will wither if you'll stand up to them. So stand up to them. Assert your rights and watch what God will do. So that's our church. That's where we are. And we're not moving out of the barn until we raise enough money to actually have a facility. So we're going to try to do that. So I have some trends in higher education that we can talk about. I don't have the research from Pew about money raising for churches, but I bet it's very similar because, you see, this is what I do for a living. I work in the higher education realm, and Hillsdale College, in case you don't know, it's been around since 1844. We have a total of 1,500 students. We have a total of 15,000 living alumni. Yet we have a mailing list of 7 million people where we send our monthly mailer to, and they support us. We have over 300,000 individual contributors every year, and we raise a boatload of money. We built a chapel on campus. I don't know how much you spent building your facility here. This is a beautiful church. I will give you my barn in exchange for this building if you would like. My barn has a few extras that maybe you don't have. Like last week, while I was preaching, I was attacked by a bat. It was really fun. But our campus, Hillsdale College, we spent $37 million building our chapel. We don't require our students to attend chapel. They can use the facility if they'd like. They don't have to come to chapel. We don't even have the chapel services. We just have a chapel building that we spent $37 million building. Why were we able to do that? Because we have a lot of money coming in. And I'm going to show you how we raise that money. We have more money than we know what to do with at Hillsdale College, and I'm going to show you why. And hopefully, we as a group can do that for Grace churches throughout the country and throughout the world. So the number of giving households has declined about 74% in 1990, down to 49% in 2019. Over 30 million fewer donors to higher education. Higher ed has experienced the most significant loss in individual giving. Last year, 10.6% decline in giving totals. Perhaps the largest drop in recorded history for higher education. Declining donor counts dragged down the dollar amounts that were given. Last year, philanthropy plummeted $17 billion. Donors have just disappeared and given up on giving money for philanthropy. I don't know if any of your churches are experiencing that. My barn church isn't yet, because I'm the biggest donor to my church. Trends in higher education. Big donors are waiting longer. The median age of the first-time top 100 donors increased from 53 to 67. So what Ron talked with you about in terms of the aging of the churches is happening for donors throughout this country as well. The donors are getting older. So your mega donors are waiting longer to achieve the giving levels that many schools have grown accustomed to. And that's going to impact the future of campaigns. The average number of years of giving before becoming a committed donor used to be 7. Now it's 20. You have to have somebody sitting in your pews or your comfortable chairs for a very long time before they become truly committed givers. The median age for a committed donor used to be 44. Now it's 62. Potential big donors are waiting longer to give, and they're getting older before they do. But what if? What if Grace International had the resources so that every time you needed to build a building, you didn't have to go to the bank and persuade them that you were a good ministry. You came to Grace International because it's raised so much money, it can give you the loan that you need to build your building. What if Grace International had enough money to sponsor all of the missionaries that we want to send out into the world? What if Grace International could regularly promote your church, your local church, without it costing you anything to do that advertising? What if Grace International was able to do all this without impacting your tithes and offerings, without asking for anybody to stop giving you the money that they're currently giving you? What if they actually created contributions for your church? That's what we can do. If we implement the same model, the successful model that Hillsdale College has used to create a $1.25 billion endowment with only 15,000 alumni, 1,500 students. Here's where the money is. You see, you're asking for checks and donations and dollars out of a very small pocketbook. You're asking for money out of the checkbook. You're asking for money that people won't spend on going out to lunch and dinner. But that's not where wealth is. Wealth is in the assets that people own. It's easier for somebody to give you an asset than it is for them to write you a check, if you do it right. Here, the baby boomer generation has $78 trillion in assets. That doesn't mean they have that money in the checking account where you're trying to get them to give out of, but they own assets. Those assets are going to change hands. 7% of this wealth transfer is going to go to charity. 7%. Now, 7% is a big number. It's $5.5 trillion. But are you going to get any of it? I'll tell you right now, Hillsdale College is going to get a sizable chunk of it because we've got it set up so that that happens. Unless your church is also pursuing the assets that people own, you won't get any of it. In fact, it'll probably, your parishioners, the people that go to your church, will end up giving some of it to me at Hillsdale College. What about all of it? That's just the baby boomers. 7% of all of it is almost $10 trillion. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Planned giving. The goal of planned giving, what we're going to talk about, is to get the charitable tax benefits today of giving to charity after you die, while keeping the income that your assets provide you for the rest of your life. You see, that's how Hillsdale College has done this. Their donors say, well, I have this rental property, or I have these stocks that I've invested in, and it pays me a dividend. Or I have money in the bank, they're certificates of deposit, and it gives me some interest, and I need that interest. Social Security isn't enough. I need the rental income from that rental property, but goodness, I don't like being a landlord anymore. I got to deal with these terrible tenants that I have, and I have to repair their roof and get rid of their water heater, and I've got problems. Or they'll say, well, we've got a really good tenant in our rental property, and I know we could get more money. I mean, we're charging below market rent, but we like the tenant because they're good to our property. They don't ruin our property, so we don't want to raise the rent on them. Okay. Well, what if we could keep the income coming to you? In fact, maybe even increase the amount of income that you get, give you a charitable tax deduction that you get today, and benefit Hillsdale College in the future. That's how Hillsdale College has raised all of the money that it's raised. Well, not all of it, but most of it. The largest chunk of it is through planned giving. We're going to talk about doing that for Grace International. Everybody does it. Charitable giving, planned giving. Here's charitable gift annuities, Samaritan's Purse. Everybody's heard of Samaritan's Purse. They don't have a church that they can market to on a weekly basis and pass the bucket to, or ask for tithes and offerings to be put in the box in the back, or go to the website. I guess they do have a website you can go to give. But Samaritan's Purse does charitable gift annuities. This is planned giving. A charitable gift annuity is a simple, secure arrangement that benefits Samaritan's Purse, provides an income to you and or a loved one, and offers substantial tax benefits. You may make a gift of $10,000 or more with cash or appreciated stock, part of which is tax deductible, and received a fixed annuity payment for life or for an agreed term. The remainder of your gift goes to support the work of Samaritan's Purse at the end of your lifetime or at the end of the agreed upon term. People love that. People give Samaritan's Purse. I bet people in your congregations give Samaritan's Purse money for that program. They would have given it to you if your church offered that program. Churches, as individual churches, don't generally offer that program, though. Here's the Salvation Army. Planned giving, wills, gift annuities, trusts. It's the same as Samaritan's Purse. Not one individual Salvation Army location, they don't do it, but the larger group nationally, they offer it. Here's the Catholic, it's hard to read from this angle, Catholic Extension Society. That's one of the Catholic charities. They do it as well. Gifts that pay you income, charitable gift annuities. How about Answers in Genesis? Do you know these people? They're the ones with the Ark Encounter in Kentucky. You've seen their commercials when the talking giraffe and his family are walking in front of the Ark, right? They don't have a church where there are church members in the pews and chairs giving them money every week. They do have admissions fare at the gate, but this is how the bulk of the money is raised, through planned giving. Charitable gift annuities is what it says there. How about St. Jude's Hospital? Oh my goodness, their commercials, they just tug at your heart, don't they? Those kids at the hospital, they do. I mean, you'd like to give them money every month, and they ask for money every month. But those few dollars they're asking you for, that's just the lead-in, so then they can begin to market to you the planned gifts. They're not keeping all those commercials on television, paying for that TV time through that $15 monthly contribution. How about Tunnel to Towers? They ask for, is it $11 a month? $11 a month. And they're on every day. I see a Tunnels to Tower commercial several times a day on TV. Don't you? You think they can buy that TV time with $11 a month? There better be a lot of people giving them $11. But really, that's just the beginning. That starts. So then they can begin to market to you ways to give, planned giving. Here's the charitable gift annuities for the Oregon Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. I figured I'd look something up in Oregon since we were coming to Oregon. The Seventh-day Adventists, they do this. Do you? How about Oregon University? University of Oregon, charitable gift annuities, gifts that pay you income. Everybody in the philanthropic world does this in order to get the real money that they need to do their program. And of course, there's Hillsdale College, gifts that pay you income, charitable gift annuities, how it works. We raise so much money through gift annuities, it's just really crazy. But the reason we raise money this way is because we're actually giving back to your people in your pews, people who are going to your church. We're actually giving them money for the rest of their lives. I'll shock you actually by showing you something at the end. But here's how it works. The charitable gift annuity allows for an asset such as either cash or stock or life insurance to be in the annuity. And it's a one-page document. It's a simple contract between the person who puts the money in and the charity, where the charity says, we're going to give you lifetime income. It's going to be guaranteed, and it's going to be fixed income for the rest of your life. And you'll get a charitable deduction. You'll get a charitable deduction for the amount that eventually goes to the charity. And there are tables that determine how much that is. And so here are some benefits. There's an immediate income tax deduction benefit for your donor. It's guaranteed and fixed income stream for the rest of their life, and it can be for the life of a second person as well. It avoids the estate tax entirely. It's partially tax-free and reduces the capital gains taxes that might be in the stock appreciation, for instance. And you get to tell the charity how to use the gift portion. And there are no fees or commissions because it's not a life insurance product. It has nothing to do with life insurance. There are no commissions that come out of that money. 100% of the money goes into your gift annuity. Your security is that it becomes a general obligation of the charity. So you, as a church, would have to guarantee by saying, we'll sell the building if we have to sell the building, but we're making the payment to you. That's why individual churches don't do this. You need a collective. You need a larger group of people to give this kind of security. So here are the rates. Let's say you're 75 years old. The gift annuity can pay 7%, and everybody pays the same rate. There's an organization that all charities follow. It's called the American Council on Charitable Gift Annuities, and they publish the rate that you should pay for a sustainable program. And a 75-year-old gets paid 7% for the rest of their life. So that 75-year-old has a 17-year life expectancy. And so for those 17 years, we're guaranteeing, and by the way, if they continue to live longer, they'll get paid for as long as they're alive. But the scenario here, to put some numbers to it, I took a 17-year scenario so we can have some numbers to see how it works in the life expectancy. Say $250,000 cash is a pretty typical gift annuity. Has anybody ever put a check in the box at your church for $250,000? Hasn't happened in my barn. But people have that much in certificates of deposit guaranteed by the bank. And instead of getting the 3% or the 4%, or if they tie it up a long time, maybe 5%, they'll take that certificate of deposit out when it matures and put it into the gift annuity, and they'll get 7%. In addition to getting the 7%, they're going to get tax benefits. In addition to tax benefits, some of the 7% is going to be tax-free, whereas the certificate of deposit is fully taxable with no current year income tax deduction for them. That's why they're going to take their money out of the bank and put it into the Grace International Charitable Gift Annuity if we had this program. Right now, they're giving it to me at Hillsdale College. So what happens first is that they do a contract with Grace International. Grace International gives them a tax deduction for $99,000 because ultimately that's how much is projected to go to the charity. The balance of it is going to be used in distributing income. They're going to get an annual income of $17,000. Out of that $17,000, $12,000 of it is going to be tax-free. The bank doesn't give you any tax-free income when you have a certificate of deposit. It's fully taxable. So if you take into account how tax-free money works, you'd have to actually get 9.4% to equal the same amount of money put into the donor's pocket as you do when it only costs Grace International 7%. It costs the charity 7%, but the donor gets 9.4%. The difference is made up by Uncle Sam. They're not getting their share. That's why the donor will take the money out of the bank and put it into a gift annuity to benefit you as a church. Isn't this a good program? What if there were two people? That's for a one-life person. Well, for two people, there's also another amount of money. Let's say that 75-year-old is married to a 70-year-old. It's 5.8%. Same $250,000 put into the Grace International gift annuity program, and the payment this time is going to be $79,000. It's a little bit lower. Why is it lower? Because of that 70-year-old. They're going to live longer, so the money's pushed out further into the future before it comes to the charity. They're going to receive $14,500 a year, and they can take that monthly, they can take it quarterly, any way that they'd like. But out of that $14,500, $9,000 is going to be tax-free. That means for this couple, it's a 7.5% equivalent. They'd have to get 7.5% fully taxable in order to get the same amount of money in their pocket as what Grace International could pay them. People do this all day long. They love that idea of getting secure income that they can't get anywhere else. And they like the idea of benefiting the charity. They'd like to support the church more, but they need the money for themselves. Well, this is a way of doing both. They get to keep the money for themselves, and they get income for the rest of their lives, and they get a big tax deduction. And after they pass away, the money goes into the charity. So it takes time for these programs to kick in. But do you plan to have a church 10 years from now? Unless you get the youth that Ron's talking about, you might not have it. Unless you have money, you might not have it either. In the future, there are only going to be two kinds of universities: those that are well endowed or supported by taxpayer dollars, or those that have closed. Hillsdale doesn't take any taxpayer dollars, so we have to be well endowed. And this is how we do it. There's also this Give It Twice trust. That's the Answers in Genesis people again. This is really interesting. If you read all the words in that slide, it's exactly the same as the Hillsdale College slide on the Give It Twice trust. Word for word. They substitute it in the top line. It says, you may be looking for a way to provide your children with income while making a gift to Hillsdale College. Wait a minute. It says, you may be looking for a way to provide your children with income while making a gift to Answers in Genesis. That's the only part they changed. But this is not proprietary. This is the way big fundraising organizations raise big money. So this Give It Twice trust. Well, what's that? Well, it's a kind of a charitable remainder trust. There are many different kinds of charitable remainder trusts. We're going to look at one. The main benefit of a charitable remainder trust is the elimination of capital gains taxes. Any kind of capital gain taxes on any appreciated asset. You might have a stock. I met with somebody who started investing in the stock market when they were in college back in the 40s, and they'd never sold the stock. They just kept buying and buying and buying. Do you know what kind of capital gain tax he had? It was so huge, he couldn't sell the stock. So we eliminate the capital gains tax with a charitable remainder trust. Anything works. I was giving a presentation for Hillsdale College in Montana, and somebody said, well, you keep talking about real estate, but I have a herd of cattle. Will it work with a herd of cattle? Sure. If we can appraise the cattle, we can put a herd of cattle in the charitable remainder trust. And sure enough, that's what he did. He liked it so much, about 2 years later, he gave us a second herd. It's amazing. This is an amazing vehicle. You transfer title to an appreciated asset because we're going to eliminate the capital gains tax entirely for you. And what happens is, the first thing is, we're going to have some projections. We're going to assume we're going to earn 7%, but we are definitely going to pay you 5% of the value, of the appraised value of the asset that you put in. So we've got a 2% growth factor in there. Watch how wonderful this works out for your donor. The first thing that happens is they're going to get an income tax deduction of the full amount that will eventually go to the charity. And then they're going to get taxable income. Now, it's going to grow tax-free inside of the charitable remainder trust, but the income that comes out is going to be taxable. So it's just like an IRA. It can grow tax-free inside of the IRA, but then when it comes out, you fully pay taxes on it. And they can take that monthly or quarterly. It can be an electronic funds deposit, or a check can be mailed to them. And then we're going to have an avoidance of the capital gains tax entirely. And if you had real estate, if you have anybody who owns real estate in your church, they're depreciating that real estate currently. They're taking some of the cost of the real estate off of their income taxes through depreciation. And the government gives you that depreciation because they know that when you sell the property, they're going to recapture it all. And they're going to recapture it as ordinary income. And so they don't mind that you get a current year's tax deduction. They're going to get their money. But not this way. When you put the real estate into the charitable remainder trust, the government never gets a tax. They don't capture any capital gains, and you don't recapture any depreciation you've taken. So then at the end of the term, everything left over in the trust goes to Grace International. Now, by the way, I'm using Grace International because I couldn't fit everybody's church in that block, but it doesn't have to go to just one organization. There can be a split. Grace International can create this program, and at the end of the term, there could be a split with whatever church the person was attending, as well as having some go to Grace International. So there's all kinds of flexibility involved. So let's put some numbers to it. Let's say that you have a $250,000 piece of real estate with a cost basis of $50,000. The first thing that happens is that you're going to put that title into the charitable remainder trust. And $11,900 is going to become an income tax deduction. $111,000 is going to be an income tax deduction. There'll be no capital gains taxes to pay. There'll be no recaptured depreciation. And at the end of the term, whatever's left over in the trust goes to the charities. So we're not done yet. There's more. Because in addition to not paying the capital gains tax, in addition to not recapturing the depreciation, and in addition to getting an income tax deduction, the donor gets income. 5% of the value of the trust. And in the first year, that's $12,500. And then at the end of the year, hopefully it's grown because we've invested it properly and we've gained more than the 5% we paid out. So now 5% of the total value is going to be paid out in the next year. We revalue it every year come January 1. Donors love this. We're still not done. We can have more than that go to the donor. In fact, if we're going to assume only 7% return, so that's 2% more than the investment amount, the donor's going to receive $368,000 during that 23 years, in addition to all the tax benefits. But then look up at the top right. $397,000 is left over. Now, we started with $250,000. We've paid out $370,000, and we still have $400,000 left over. Who didn't get their cut? Uncle Sam. There were no taxes paid. And this is what happens when you can have tax-free money rolling over and generating more wealth without paying taxes on it until it comes out. But we can even send more money to the donor. If the donor wants, we can have another 20 years go to the donor's children for 20 years. And in that 20-year time period, they'll receive $453,000 because of the compounding effect of having 2% growth. 2% growth. And we readily beat that 2% growth with our investment portfolio. At the end of 43 years, it's $590,000. Now, 43 years is a long time from now. You have to wait for these plan giving programs to kick in and really kick in. But once they do, you can't turn it off. Had you started this 40 years ago, right? Look, Ron, that's what Hillsdale did. We started this back in the 80s and 90s, and we're reaping those benefits today. Regularly getting $100 million plus every year coming in this way without doing anything today. We did the work back then, and it's just rolling in. So there's an art to this. We never reach for the gift. We only receive gifts. We tell people what's available. If they want to do something, they can do it. It's like growing a Christmas tree farm. You know, you're going to have smaller Christmas trees, and then last year's Christmas trees, and 5 years ago, a Christmas tree that we planted, and eventually the tall ones that you harvest. That's what this is. You never actually ask for the money. You just show people what's available through the tax code. The process is relational. You have to develop relationships with donors. The donors got to enjoy it and want to engage in it. I have donors who call me. First of all, I never make a cold call for Hillsdale College. I have donors call me and say, in fact, it happened while I'm here. Yesterday at the hotel, I received an email from a donor who did a charitable remainder trust with me 2 years ago, and she sent me an email and said, I'd like to do that again with another property. Can we get started? I said, sure. Same terms as last time? Sure. While we teach about tax benefits, we don't assume that tax benefits alone is the reason people want to do this. Donors give based on a higher motivation of wanting to accomplish the mission that you're accomplishing. They desire to accomplish that. They've done well in life, now they want to do good with their wealth. Done right, giving makes people feel good. It's a godly act, like forgiveness. Giving is a godly act. And people feel good when it's done in the right way. The right way is people self-select. You don't beat it out of them. They self-select. Our role is to let the donor know these tax benefits are available. We explain the benefits, and then the donor self-selects. They decide if they want to do it. We don't need to know how much a person has. We need to discover what interests them. Do they want to save the life of the baby and create a pregnancy resource area? Do they want to support single moms who are having trouble with their cars getting repaired and not being taken advantage of? Do they want to help the homeless vet to get off the street? Or are they going to reach the youth of the world with Ron's program? What interests them? That's what will get them to give the money, give the asset that they have, that you're not currently getting. I've given Hillsdale College presentations here in Oregon before. It's a tough word for me to pronounce. Multnomah Athletic Club, is that how you say it? In Portland, the Multnomah? That's the one, the athletic club. I've made presentations there, and everybody that gave money to Hillsdale College gave through this program, through a charitable remainder trust with assets of rental properties. They're Christians in Oregon that probably go to some of your churches that gave money to my college because I've asked them for it. And the Grace International churches are not asking for it or showing them that this is available. Here's that picture of the first meeting of my church. You recognize it. I showed it to you earlier. There are 10 adults there. 2 from Texas, we don't count. 2 are me and my wife, we don't count. So that means there are 8 other adults there. They're my friends. I knew all of them when I opened that first day. One of them became a friend of mine because he came to a presentation I made in Manchester, New Hampshire for Hillsdale College. One of those other adults in that picture has given Hillsdale College over $1 million in charitable remainder trusts. Now he gives me $1,000 a month. That's okay. I actually know his financial condition very well, and that's about half of a tithe. And I do know that he supports other ministries. He tithes. But there's a bigger pocket than his checkbook that Hillsdale College got to before I could. Now that I have a church, if I can get Grace International interested, that person who has another rental property worth $500,000 could end up giving it to Hillsdale College, but I'm telling him to hold. That maybe he'll be able to do something else with it. and reach people with the gospel through Grace International. And he likes that idea. Can you believe it? Out of that motley crew, there's a donor who's given over $1 million to a college he's never set foot on. How many of those people are in your church? I'm willing to bet quite a few, because I do this all over the country, and I know that there are. There's lots of wealth out there that is not in a checking account where they pay tithes and offerings out of, but it's true, it's real wealth. So you have to have the right posture. Most people cry about their need. Most charities try schmoozing prospects. They ask for the gift. All those techniques are wrong. Instead, offer hope, develop partnerships, invest in a high-impact initiative, project your return on investment, tell them the benefit that they're going to accomplish, express gratitude and demonstrate your impact. We could go over the right way to ask and the wrong way to ask, which is what this slide talks about, but I want to talk for the last few minutes about the process, the conversation, the way to build that relationship. Given time, you want to change the tensions involved in the relationship with the donor. Initially, that tension, there's a relationship tension when you meet with somebody who's going to talk about fundraising. A little bit of a standoff. Even if they come to church, is the pastor going to want to get into my pocket? A little bit of a standoff. The relationship tension starts out very high, and the goal is to bring it down over time. Now, how do you bring down relationship tension? Ladies, what does it take to make a relationship better? I couldn't hear anybody. Quality time. And in that time, what makes it quality? You have to talk to the other person. You have to have a relationship of communication. If you communicate, that's how you have a better relationship with the Lord. You have communication with Him. You spend time with Him. You pray. You worship. Communication brings the relationship down. Usually the women get it right off the bat. They yell out the word communication or conversation or talk to them or something like that. The men never get it right. When you start a project, nobody's involved with you. They don't have any tension. There's no motivation for them to do the thing that you want them to do. Otherwise, they'd already be doing it, and they're not. So initially, the task tension, the motivation to do the act, starts out very low. And the goal is to raise the motivation to do the thing that you want them to do above their resistance in the relationship with you. It's at that crossover point that you want to get to. The way you increase the motivation to do the task is you talk about the mission, what you're going to accomplish, how you're going to benefit the kingdom, how you're going to have a reward that's going to last an eternity because we've accomplished this mission of reaching the next generation for Christ. That crossover point, it's at that point that you couldn't stop the person from giving you. They're going to give you so much more money than you can ask. That's why I never actually asked for a dollar amount. They would give only the amount I asked for if I asked for a dollar amount. But if I don't ask and I make that crossover, they'll throw money at me. More than you could ever receive. Most people, however, don't bring down the relationship tension. So the relationship tension line always stays higher than the motivation to do the act. That means that they'll eventually do the thing that you're asking them to do. They'll go get a charitable remainder of trust, but they'll do it with Samaritan's Purse and not with you, because you didn't create a good relationship with them. Or some people, they'll reduce the relationship tension line, but they'll never raise the motivation to do the thing. So the task tension always remains low. In that scenario, what happens is that you've made a friend. They're very, very close to you. They're very friendly with you, but they're never going to give you money. And those are the mistakes that most people make when they try to engage in these kind of programs. We will not make those mistakes if we do this program. And yet, you, 5 years from now, 7 years from now, 10 years from now, will have your churches well funded, endowed even, so that you can use the tithes and offerings to expand your ministry rather than pay the light bill. Wouldn't that be nice? So we've got time for questions. If you'd like, you can email to me. There's my email, howard@gracenewengland.org. I am the senior pastor of the church. There isn't any other pastor, but I decided today I would call myself senior pastor. Does anybody have any questions about planned giving or about this concept of raising assets as opposed to just getting tithes and offerings? If not, sir?
What does Grace International invest in order to pay out that 7%?
The question is, what does Grace International invest in to pay out the 7%? The answer is nothing yet, because Grace International does not yet have such a program. I'm raising this to everybody in Grace International. Steve Riggle has asked me to come and talk about this so that he can take the pulse of Grace International to see if the churches would like Grace International to start this. I can tell you what Hillsdale College invests in, and it's through various money managers we invest in the stock market. And we regularly get 9.5%, 10% return. But we only project 7%. Because we've found that when you do better than what you've promised, people really become very happy with you. But if you promised 9% and you only gave them 8.5%, they'd be mad. So instead, we give them a realistic number, 7%. We'll do 7%. And we always beat it. Good question. Ron? I'm for the youth, Ron.
Yes, I was going to try to convince you of that, but no, I wanted to ask on behalf of pastors here. I think definitely everyone's got probably wealthy people in their church, entrepreneurs, but it becomes a very awkward conversation. I'm just thinking about how pastors might be thinking. I know they're wealthy, I know I need their money, but I don't know how to ask them for it or even how to have that conversation. I know in some places, people that are really wealthy, they won't even tithe to their church because that's a huge amount of money. They're like, if I give $100,000, my pastor wouldn't know what to do with it. So they give like 3% and they'll give the rest of it somewhere else.
Right.
And so can you just help pastors about, I would imagine, how to have conversations that reduce that tension you were mentioning?
Excellent question. Did everybody hear Ron? He has a good voice. He projected. You heard him way back here? How do pastors raise this conversation with their wealthy members of their church? You don't. Don't do it. Don't even try. We would have the expert from afar come in and give a presentation about tax advantages and tax benefits, and the wealthy members of the church are going to go back to their law firms and CPAs and say, how come you've never told me about this? It happens all the time. And the guys will say, well, gee, you never asked us. Great response. The reality of it is, they're attorneys, they're business attorneys usually. They actually do not know the tax code. And they're CPAs, they're actually people who fill out forms a great deal. They're not trained to be planners. And so they don't raise these points with them. I have a donor to Hillsdale College who bought a home back in 1962 for $24,000. I'm told that's a lot of money for a home in 1962 because, you see, this home came with 100 feet of beachfront property in Malibu, California. He was a doctor. He raised his kids. They went to Malibu High School, and then they grew up and left. And this is the part I never understood. The doctor and his wife, they got tired of living on the beach in Malibu. I guess it happens. So I met them in about 2004, and now the house is worth $4.5 million. Well, that's really not true. The person who bought the house for $4.5 million tore the house down. That 100 feet of beachfront sand, that was worth $4.5 million. So you get a deduction or exemption of $500,000 when you sell your personal residence, but that didn't cover their gain. We put that home into a charitable remainder trust, paid zero in capital gains taxes, invested the full $4.5 million for them, and now they're getting 5% of that amount every year for the rest of their lives, plus 20 years to their kids. They love it. Absolutely love it. So will the large donors, maybe not large donors, the wealthy members of your church. They will love it because you're giving to them. You're not asking them to give to you. You're giving to them tax breaks. You're giving to them not only the income tax deduction, you're getting an asset out of their estate so there's no estate tax. You're avoiding the capital gains tax. You're avoiding the recapture of the ordinary income on the depreciation of their rental property. And you're increasing the amount of income that they're getting through that asset. Why wouldn't they do this? The only reason they don't do this is either they don't know about it or they don't actually have a good relationship with you. And they will go do this with their alma mater, or they will go do this with Samaritan's Purse, or the Ark Encounter, or some other Christian charity. That's the only reason they wouldn't do it with you. They do it with Hillsdale College all the time, and they've never set foot on Hillsdale College's campus. Haven't even seen the campus, let alone have anybody who goes to school there. It's a wonderful program. And the wealthy members of your church will be tied to you more than ever because you've given them a benefit that not even their tax attorneys and CPAs were able to figure out for them. Good question, Ron. Thank you. And with that, Stu, I guess I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you all.